Welcome to the All Systems Go podcast, where we invite startup founders and digital marketers to discuss strategies and software used to build automated marketing and sales systems that scale. I'm Chris L. Davis, your host, founder of Automation Bridge, where we train your marketer or place you with an automation service provider to do the automated marketing for you. And on this episode, I have Kyle Roof, and Kyle is responsible for the development and implementation of all SEO techniques used by the agency he co-founded called the High Voltage SEO, and he owns the software tool Page Optimizer Pro. He's also the co-founder of Internet Marketing Gold. It's a global community of over 3,000 SEO professionals who test and prove cutting edge SEO techniques. Do you see the theme, everybody? We will be talking about SEO and the role that it plays in automated marketing. Kyle has also been featured in Ryan Stewart's Blueprint Training. He's been in the Search Engine Journal, Authority Hacker Podcast, and much more. Kyle, welcome to the podcast. How are you doing?
Thanks so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Yes. I'm glad to have you on as well because again, I think that in all of the digital marketing there is to take place, SEO kind of gets up put on the backseat. I see people jump into advertising and all in joint ventures, and a lot of times SEO, which has been one of the most proven strategies over time in marketing online. So I'm excited to have you on to discuss the role that it plays with automated marketing. But before we jump into it, tell us a little bit about your business and how you got your personal journey, I should say, how you got involved or how you found SEO.
Sure. Well, in a previous life, I was an attorney. I was a trial attorney, so I was in court every day. I did divorce, custody, and support and criminal defense. And I
Wow.
decided I'd rather chew on shards of broken glass than do one more divorce. And so my wife, she's also an attorney, also a trial attorney, and she was very burnt out as well. And so we did
Mm.
what everybody does, and we packed up and we moved to South Korea. And our plan was just to be in South Korea for a year, and then we go back being lawyers. That year turned into 5 years, and while we were there,
Mm.
we started a business with a Korean business partner, and it needed a very complex website. And it took me a long time to find a lot of developers that could do it, and I finally found this really great crew, and I was like, you know what? I bet I could general contract websites, and so that's what I started doing. And I brought my brother in the company, and he does web design and development. And I got the bright idea that we should move to India because we were just using freelancers mainly from India. And I was like, well, we could go there and open a business and we could have them in one room and then they would just work for us and we'd get more out of them
Mm.
and it would be more cost effective. And so that's what we did. And we were told we are going to get a shakedown from the police because that's just kind of how it goes. And I wasn't in India at the time. I was in the U.S. My brother was in India, and there's a knock at the door, and it's the police. And they're like, "We need to see your business papers." And he shows them the papers, and they're like, "These are the wrong papers." And he's like, oh, "Okay, how much do you need?" And instead of asking for a bribe, they put him in handcuffs and threw him in jail. And
Oh man.
so he's talking to the chief of police, and the chief of police goes, "These could be the right papers. I don't know, but you have two choices. You can leave town tomorrow, or two, you can sit in jail and wait for the magistrate to come, and the magistrate will sort it out." And my brother said, "Well, when does the magistrate come?" And the chief of police goes, "I don't know." And so my brother goes, "Well, I think I'll leave town tomorrow." So he runs back to the office, grabs what he got. We had a mixed use place. So the first floor was the business, and the second floor were like apartments.
Okay.
So at this point, our employees have fled. Like they don't need to be involved in whatever's going on. So my brother grabs what he can. We get him out of India, and we start hemorrhaging clients
Mm.
because we can't uh, do any fulfillment. We found out from our neighbor that as soon as we left, the police came in and took all of our stuff, all of our computers, all the furniture, all the stuff that we put in there. And our landlord had a tenant in 3 days later. And in this mixed use place, it was a 6 month deposit. Plus, we just paid that rent. So the landlord got 7 months worth of rent, and a new tenant, and the police department got all of our stuff. And so,
Mm.
without any employees, my brother goes, "Well, I can take these four clients, because he does design and development, and that is going to keep him afloat." And I don't code, and so we had just started doing this thing I'd heard about called SEO, and I was like, you know what? We built the websites with you. We could probably get like an extra $100 a month out of them or something. And
Yeah.
in order for me to, and we just signed a whole bunch of of clients, and in order for me to pay the rent next month, I had to learn SEO that day, and
Mm.
get it done. And that's basically what I did.
And
And
real quick, Kyle,
yeah,
what year was this? Where were you at? What is this in the
we're
early
2012, 2013.
2012? Okay, got it. All right, continue.
And yeah, so I started doing SEO, um, and it turned out I was pretty good at it. And one big thing that I realized while doing SEO is, if you search for something like, should I do this or is this a ranking factor? You'll get like three yeses, three nos, and three maybes. And I was like, well,
Mm,
that's not going to work. Like, that's not how you
yeah.
can learn anything. But then what I realized, like, oh, people don't share. What occurred to me is they must be running their own test sites. And so then I started developing methods to test Google's algorithm. How can we see what's going on? How can we see if something is or is not a ranking factor? And then can we see if something is a more important factor than something else? And
Mm,
through that, I was able to develop a method to test Google's algorithm. And I have a US patent now on if something is or is not a ranking factor in a search engine. I think I'm one of the few people that actually has a patent in SEO outside of Google. Um,
wow.
I met my business partner kind of along this time. We then founded the agency High Voltage, and then out of High Voltage, running all these tests, we're figuring out what's going on with the algorithm. Um, One of the big things to understand in SEO is that the secret is hiding in plain sight. Google shows
Mm,
you the sites that it likes, and it likes them for one of two things. They're on page, the text that you see, or they're off page, and those are often seen as like backlinks or other signals. But because they show you what they like, you can start to count things. You can count what's on the
mm,
page. And so that's what we started doing. What we realized is we can count how many times we use our exact keyword, how many times we use variations of it or phrase match, or very close synonyms like attorney and lawyer. And then also contextual
mm,
terms, terms that give context and meaning. We can count those as well. And what I realized is that we can start doing math on this and figure out how many times we need to put these terms on the page, but in very specific places because not every place is equal. Google is looking at different places on the page in order to do that. And
so
so
good.
we started doing that by hand, and it was terrible. And we realized we should make this automated. And then so that's where Page Optimizer Pro came out of, was first doing a Google script with it. And then I showed it to some friends, some SEO friends, and do you think this looks good? Would you like this? And they're like, yes, well, we definitely want that. And so we put it on the back of our website for about 6, 7 months, gave away for free, and then we brought in a developer and got into Python and turned it into a real SaaS, and that's now it's humming. It's going really really well, and over 2,000 agencies use it worldwide, and it's been a lot of fun.
Oh man, I love the story. There's some in there I want to revisit it and kind of double click on,
Yeah.
but the everything that you just said, and you just glossed over. You like, yeah, there's certain patterns and certain places for Google like these. This is the part of SEO because it's a lot. It's very technical,
Hmm.
but these are the part of SEO that people get overwhelmed with. But I have to say this: the most favorite part of your story from me is hearing how you manually went through a process, prove that process out to not only be something that you needed, but you validated that other people would like and need, and then you automated it. And I talk about marketing and sales all the time, but that the approach of making sure it works manually first before you
Yeah.
automate is across the board, man. It's across the board, whether you're automating like software, like you said, and essentially it's taking your brain and Google's functionality and creating a tool that brings them both together and
Yeah.
produces an output, right, for the end user. So I love seeing it. Yeah, very, very interesting story, man. I have to ask this. What was it? You're looking at your rent. It's coming, man, and you've got to pay some bills. You've got some website experience, some business. You've made some money. What was that thing that said, "Let me do SEO and not anything else"? Was this something that you kind of always had on the radar? Did you read an article? What was that?
Well, once I jumped into it, something that I realized is that
Hmm.
it's problem solving, and I really
Hmm.
enjoy problem solving. And the idea is that, well, we're here and we need to get to there, and every website you deal with is in a different situation. It has a different history. People taking different approaches to it, and then they also usually have different like goals. Like, what is this site trying to do, or what do we need to do? And so you have different KPIs. And the idea is that we're here and we need to get to there, and how can we do that? And that kind of problem solving really appeals to me, and I really really enjoyed it. I'd also like even though the business in India went down in flames, it was doing very well. And
Mm,
like I came to a point with my wife that was like, should we give this up? Like should we? I can go back and be a lawyer. I mean, that is a nice safety net because I'm still
yeah.
licensed, and so I mean I can. But that was an option. Should we just do this? And turns out my wife said no. She had actually gone out that day and gotten a second job, waiting tables,
Mm,
so that I could
mm.
rebuild what we had. And she's like, no, this is too good. This is something that you're good at. That we
Wow.
can make a lot of money with this, and obviously this is a setback, but I don't want you to go back. And so like because
Yeah.
I didn't want to go back, but obviously you're trying to make good decisions. Should we just was this a pipe dream and we should just let it go? And she's
Yep.
like, no, we
Yep.
need to do it. And so that was an amazing point in my life, having her make that decision that maybe my income won't be there for a little bit while we kind of rebuild this thing, and then also then retool it so that I wasn't doing web design development anymore. I was just completely then on SEO at that point.
Oh man, Kyle, I love this story, man. I'm trying not to get caught up in the story and just the beauty in it. Any entrepreneur, I know this, Kyle, any entrepreneur listening, when you said your wife got a second job and was like, no, you're onto something, keep going. I know their heart just melted because that type of support, if you've experienced it, I've experienced it. If you experience it, it makes you appreciate who you have in your corner, that much
Yeah, yeah,
more. And for those who have been fighting this fight without it, it's just like, man, that is the difference maker a lot of times between those who tap out, prematurely and those that make it, man. So shout out to your wife, man. Great, great backbone support. Uh I mean everything, man, right? Where
yeah,
where would
yeah,
we be? Where would we
yeah.
be, Kyle?
Not very far. Not very far.
Yeah, and the other part of your story that I love, man, is that you continue to search for what that sweet spot was, and when you found it in SEO, it was okay to let go of the other stuff and say, "Hey,
Yeah,
look,
yeah,
I'm just gonna zero in on this, and really scale it." So, man, love the story. Thanks for sharing, man. It really helps me understand just who you are, in the company in itself. And it's important for my listeners because I always like to tell them, get to know the people behind the software or the company, not from a personal, like, hey, what drink does Kyle like? Where does he walk in the day? Like,
sure,
but
sure.
understanding that you've got some skin in the game, man. You're approaching a decade here
Yeah,
of
yeah, yeah,
doing
yeah,
SEO. Like, this is not just something that you read a book on, built a website, and say, "Hey, I'm doing this." Like, you're vetted, and you've got the battle scars, and you've been time tested. So, love finding founders and entrepreneurs like yourself, to come on. But let's get into some good stuff because I get to learn today. By the way, everybody. Um, Kyle is teaching me as I'm interviewing him because I will be the first to admit I'm no SEO expert. My blog right now has been the best decision I've ever made. It's
mm.
generated more money than I could ever account for, all accidentally. Right?
Yeah,
Like,
sure,
none of
sure.
it was I never knew how to target a keyword. I never knew how to write something a particular way and get backlinks. I just knew what people were looking for, and I
Yeah,
wrote content and shared it, and it worked. It could work a lot better. So I think I've done like some basics, right? But the
yeah.
marketer in me is like, what is the market saying? Meet that demand and be scrappy with how you get it in front of people's eyes. So now for the person who's been eyeing SEO, maybe they don't know what SEO is. Start from the top. What is SEO, search engine optimization, and how does it work? How does it actually work, Kyle?
Sure. Well, I mean, you're optimizing your pages, uh, particularly so that a search engine will like them more. That's the bottom line. When a search engine
Hmm.
comes to a page, it tries to figure out what that page is about, and then it decides if it likes the page or not. And one large misconception is a lot of people think that Google will do a value judgment. That Google will say
Mm.
like, I read this and this is good copy, and Google isn't doing that. And people they get hurt when they're like, I've heard this 1,000 times where it's like, my page is better. I've been in this industry longer. I have better sources. This guy that's on page one, they don't even do what I do. Like they don't even do the
Mm.
thing, but somehow Google likes them, and they think it's some sort of value judgment, and Google makes no value judgments. What Google does do though is it does a lot of math, because Google is an algorithm. And even though Google is unbelievably powerful, one of the most powerful things of all time, one of the greatest inventions of all time, it is not a human being, and Google cannot read like a human
Mm,
being would.
yeah.
Google reads in math, and so the idea is that we need to give Google the math that it wants, and if we do that, we can rank pretty well. One prime example is that in 2018, myself and High Voltage, we entered in a public competition to rank for a keyword. The keyword was rhinoplasty Plano. So rhinoplasty is a nose job
Mm,
in Plano, is just outside of Dallas, and it was a sprint. You only had 30 days, and it had to be a brand new domain, so you couldn't have done any previous work on it. And then the idea was launch it, and then whoever ranks the best wins. And at the end of the 30 days, we took fifth out of 27 professionals. Only nine, I think, actually got a site to rank at all within that 30 days, because that's such a short amount of
wow.
time. Think about that.
Yeah.
With 27 people that are pretty confident in their skills, nine got in. We took fifth. But about 2 weeks later, we shot up to page one, and people got pretty excited. About 2 weeks after that, we were number one organic and number one on the maps, and people really lost their minds. And the reason they lost their minds is because we wrote the entire site in lorem ipsum, fake Latin text, but we did the math.
Wow.
We did the math on how many times we needed our exact keyword, how many times we needed the variations, how many times we needed the contextual terms, and we copied and pasted them into the lorem ipsum into those sections on the page, and then we ranked number one. And so what we were showing was that you do need to write good copy, right? You need to have people do what you want them to do when they come to your website, so they convert in a certain way. But that
Yeah.
is completely separate from rank is math based, because Google
Mm,
isn't reading. Because Google, if they were reading, they'd be like, "Oh, this is a page of lorem ipsum. There's no way this should be
yeah.
on page one." But because we gave the algorithm the math that it wanted with those terms, it was quite happy with the page and ranked it number one. Um, Fun story on that.
Wow.
Uh, uh, we The page was up for several months, and then Search Engine Journal decided to do an article on it, and as like they did like some hidden expose, and it was like Google ranks site in Latin. You can look it up; the article's still there. In the original article, though, they posted my name and the website. And so about 6 hours after the article went live, Google de-indexed the site. And then that morning, that next night, from like 1:15 a.m. to about 1:25 a.m., Google de-indexed 20 of my test sites. And then this test sites had nothing to do with the competition site. They're completely separate. And so Google just did in and just did a
Wow.
punitive, I'm taking these sites down, which at the moment was a lot of fun. But then it worked out pretty well, because I realized they just validated everything that I was saying. That if I was lucky or if I was talking nonsense, they would have rolled their eyes and moved on. But because I showed how
Mhm.
you can actually learn about how the algorithm works, they didn't take kindly to that.
Yeah, yeah, don't expose my
Exactly.
algorithm.
Fast forward a couple of years to this past year, I put out a course on white hat SEO. Believe it or not, I'm a white hat SEO. I don't, I don't, I don't violate Google's guidelines on real sites. But so I'm very well versed in the rules, but I was giving the rules just another look as I was preparing for the course. And on one section of the no list in the guidelines, um, it said you can't have content that makes no sense to the reader but contains keywords. And I was like, when did that rule
Mm,
come into play? Because I know that wasn't a rule before.
right. It
And so
couldn't have been because you were able to use the Latin.
so what happened was I took the URL and I threw it into the Wayback Machine, so you can see what a web page used to be. And
Okay.
before the competition, that rule isn't there. And then a week after the competition, when my site goes live, the rule pops in, and then they punished me for my own rule 3 months later. So because
Wow.
of Shlomo did, Google wrote a Google rule for that, and so I think I'm one of the few people on the planet that has both a Google rule and a patent on SEO. I don't think there are too many people that can claim both.
You're like the Michael Jordan of SEO, right? They started to make rules literally against Mike, against
That's right.
Allen Iverson, all of these top players,
Right, right, right.
when they started dominating, man. So
Yeah,
you listen, you've made it when you have a rule after you. I guess I need to shoot for a rule after me,
that's right.
in the automation space, man. So congrats to that. And as you're talking, I'm just thinking, right? One of the misconceptions that people get when they try to do SEO on their own. One is they download like a plugin like Yoast I think there's another one I can't remember. And as long as the green light is green when they're
Right.
writing the article, they're
You're
like,
good to
yes,
go.
I'm
You're good to go.
I'm SEO optimized. That's one. But another is people think that SEO is people doing an intelligent search, right? So
Hmm.
they'll think a keyword, like for me, marketing automation could be a keyword, but somebody is not necessarily going to type in teach how to do marketing automation. They may search something like how to send an email to a lot of people at once,
Sure.
right?
Sure.
So how do you help people break out of that knowledge search? Like they don't know you exist. So clearly they're not going to search for a specific term of your business or
Right.
what you know because you're too smart. They're online looking for how do I make money and send an email, or how do I send emails that people want to open? How do I make money by not doing whatever the case may be?
Sure.
How do you help? Let me say this. How do you approach educating people on that? Because that's the main hurdle, or I should say stumbling block, that I see people fall over, is because they don't actually know what people are searching for, or even how to think like that.
Sure. Well, so a very important principle is that when you optimize for a primary keyword, such as in your example, marketing automation, if that's your
Hmm.
primary keyword, you don't just win that keyword. Web pages rank for more than one term. Healthy web pages are ranking for hundreds or thousands of terms, and many
Yeah.
of which aren't even on the page. So what that means is Google has
Mm,
associated that primary with all of these secondaries. And so what you want to do is you want to
mm,
optimize for that primary. You want to do the math for that primary. But if you do the math for that primary, you can win all of those secondary terms. And then the ones that are
mm,
most important to you, you want those as sections on the page. So like uh, that the how to send mass emails, or a lot of emails, that could be a section on that page if it's a related term. But the key is to
yeah.
figure out if they're actually related. And so how you do that is you do your search for marketing automation. There are going to be sections on the page in Google that show up. One is the people also ask. So that's the little questions box. That means that
Hmm.
those questions are related to your primary keyword. And if they're ones that are super important to you, put them on the page and answer them. The other thing is if you scroll to
Mm,
the bottom, you're going to see these related searches. Those are searches that people have done when they've done also your primary keyword search. The ones that are really important there, you want those on your page as well. And that's like a first step. But the idea is that then that's going to create sections on your page that can rank for more keywords. And that's how you get those pages that rank for hundreds or thousands of keywords, is those sections.
wow.
Now, something that's really encouraging. Let's say you're just starting out, right, and you've got a
Hmm.
site, and you want that marketing automation, but you realize you're going up against HubSpot and all these other huge sites,
Right.
and you realize there's no way I can get on page one. Should I still do that page? The answer is yes.
Yep.
Still have that page on your
Mm,
site, still optimize it, but you can do extremely well with all of those secondary keywords. And a lot of them have more intent because they're more specific to somebody's actual needs. And they're often very buyer intent or very conversion intent. They're the longer tail phrase type terms. So they're lower in volume, but
mhm.
the people that you get on the page are the people you want. So creating that marketing automation page that you may or may not win, but you can win all those other terms with the different sections, and they're related because Google showed you that they were related and they're good to get on the page.
Yeah, yeah, and it becomes like a blend of the technician, right, as well as the writer, and
Hmm.
you need to know how to format the article, but you also, need to understand the techniques behind it that Google wants while satisfying the reader. And I see what you mean now when you say Google shows you what it likes.
Yeah,
Like, it does show the questions that people have asked. It's right there.
yeah,
It's right there. So, what are some of the best practices, when it comes to SEO that you would say?
sure. Um, and you don't need my tool for this at all, by the way. These are the things. If you take your target keyword, so that marketing automation, you want to put it in four places on the page. These are the top four places. This is Group A. These are the strongest places on a page that Google's looking for terms, and you must. It's mission critical to put your target keyword in those places. And that is your title tag. That's the title that search engines see. Sometimes it's called a meta title. That's what they call it in Yoast. The title tag, the H1. The H1 is the title on your page that humans see. It's at the very top of the page. Within paragraph tags, that's just the body content, and then you want it in the URL. So your .com slash, and you want your target keyword in there. If you put your target keyword in those four places, you've probably done 60% of SEO right there. That's the that's the dirty little secret of SEO. That don't overthink it. Uh, People really try to overthink it, but put your target keyword in those four places. One caveat: if you've got a page that's old, it's established and it's doing pretty well, don't change your URL, because if you change your URL, like to put that target keyword in, you're giving Google a brand new page and you're resetting the page. So only do this on a brand new page, or page maybe you just built not that long ago that isn't doing very well yet. That's then you could change put the keyword in your URLs. But otherwise, if you've got an established page, leave as is. But make sure you've got your target keyword in those other three places. After that, use those different sections that we talked about, the people also ask and the related searches, and build an outline from those related concepts, because we know Google thinks that they're related to your target keyword. And if then you just answer the question or provide the information needed for each section, your counts for SEO and doing the math are going to be really close. You It's going to get you almost where you need to be. So you may or may not need a tool like Page Optimizer Pro, because you're going to be really close with the math anyway. You've properly answered the questions. You're getting all the terms on the page that you need. You're going to be right there. Then, if you are in more of a competitive niche or something you want to go after, then that's the time for Page Optimizer Pro to come in, and you can start to do SEO tweaks, because then you can get the math exactly where it needs to be.
Oh man, it almost sounds too good to be true. Right? But
Yeah.
let me say too simple to be true. Let me ask you this. Keywords.
Hmm.
How does someone go about identifying the keywords for an article? Because to my under this is back way back when, I would try to put multiple keywords in an article and like make this the greatest article ever. But what you're saying is you're going to have a list of keywords for your business just in
Right.
general. Take one per article
Hmm.
and optimize articles per keyword and use Google to understand what people are asking for that keyword to understand how to outline that article.
That's right. That's right. And because then that's going to give you the sections on the page. The example I give when I teach is like, if you had, you want to think about a Roman numeral outline. Your sixth grade teacher, your seventh grade teacher that taught you how to do that and told you you need to do this before you write. They were correct. And then you didn't do it, right? And then you wrote a crappy essay. It's the same thing with websites. People don't outline, they just start writing a web page. And if you don't take the time to outline, you end up with a crappy web page. It's gonna take a lot more work in the end. So think about that Roman numeral outline. So your title, that H1 that you saw on the page, that's your H1. So your Roman numeral one in your outline, like in your Roman numeral outline, that's your H1 on the page. And you got that, like the sections that are A, B, C, and D. Those are your H2s. Those are subheadings in SEO, and those create then the sections on your page. So you kind of want to do it that way. But the example I give when I teach is, if let's say you're talking about like how to make tacos. If that was your Roman numeral one and your H1, you'd probably have two sections on there: hard shell tacos and soft shell tacos, right? Or maybe street tacos. You've got like three sections. But as soon as you start talking about burritos, that's a whole other page. Even though it's still within the concept of Mexican food, it has to be on its own page, because this is our tacos page. And so anything that you're adding to the tacos page just has to be related to that concept. Otherwise, it doesn't belong on the page. So when you think about like those lists of terms, most people have a pretty decent idea of like the top terms for their particular industry. The terms that everybody wants. Where they usually get into trouble is not having a page for each of those terms, and then not finding those related concepts to get on the page to talk about. Those people also ask in the related searches. So you want to make sure that for each of your main concepts, you have one page on your site that's for them, and then the terms are clustered according to if they're related to each other, and then that's what's going on each page.
Oh man, this is so good because I have to admit, it took me late. I started outlining articles not for SEO, just to keep like to compartmentalize my brain, because I will
Yep.
find when I start to write, it just kind of goes all over the
Sure.
place.
Sure.
So it benefits you to
Mm-hmm.
keep your ideas singular
Mm-hmm.
and then allow Google to tell you what it is people actually want to hear. It becomes more like an interview. Like as you're saying this, it's like Google interviewing me.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, these are the questions that people are asking for this particular keyword. What would you say?
Yeah. No, that's
Right?
exactly right.
And that changes the entire approach. And I feel like, Kyle, I feel like that's one of the main misconceptions and missteps that people make with SEO is that they write articles humans want to read and they feel good about those articles. But when you start to factor in the technical aspect of this, nobody wants to write an article that nobody is going to read. You want people to find this, and Google is actually, they're not against you.
Right.
They're actually trying, because good content makes their search engine that much more valuable. So
Hmm.
they want you. So when you say your white hat, you're showing us what Google wants us to do.
Hmm.
It wants us to put your put your keyword in your H1 so I know when to put it in front of people when they search.
That's exactly right.
Put
So people try to like out
right.
clever it. We're like, oh, Google wants something unique, and no, Google can't figure it out. Like Google needs help. You got to help
Yes.
Google. Like this is what this page is about. Make it obvious. Like on your page,
Man.
we were talking earlier about your page, the Acuity versus
Yeah.
Calendly. That's perfect because that's exactly what people would be searching for. Like I'm looking at this tool, I'm looking at that tool. Which one's better? That's how people are
Yes.
searching, and so you're giving. I know that page is actually ranking pretty well on your site. I think it's around
Yeah.
number 8 or so. It's because you made it obvious what the page is about, and so Google didn't have to think
Yep.
about it. It's a search that people are doing, and you wrote a good page. There's some SEO stuff we can do to tweak about it. We can talk about that another time.
Absolutely.
But your concept was 100% on point, and you really hit the nail on the head earlier when you mentioned about you were kind of thinking about what are people searching, what are people
Yes.
actually looking for, and that's the right approach. You need to think about what information do people need, like related to this concept. What would they be searching for, and that's the kind of stuff that you want to tackle. One other thing you can do, which is a good technique, is so within that people also ask, right? Sometimes you're going to see some on there, and they're good questions, but they don't quite fit on your target page. It just doesn't quite work with the flow. Maybe it would kind of take away from conversion points, or it's like, yeah, it's adjacent. It's like not quite there. It's just one off. Those are still
Mhm.
excellent to use, and you want to use those as supporting pages. So what you do within your blog or wherever you can create a page quickly is just have that question on there. So just put that in the title tag in your H1, and then answer the question. 500 words, 600 words, nothing huge,
Mm.
but those are long tail phrases. What's going to happen is they're going to rank quickly, and they're going to help your website start to rank for more keywords, because websites that rank for more keywords do better. So if like you and I had,
Mm.
let's say we had sites that were very similar and they were the exact same in terms of the size, how old each site was, the backlinks, like everything's equal. But your site is ranking for 20,000 keywords and my site is ranking for 2,000. Every time you launch a new page, you're going to do better than I am.
Oh, so it's that the high tide rises
That's
all
right.
boats.
So then, if you can
Um,
launch these little pages and they start ranking for keywords, what happens is that all the boats all rise from your site. Everything starts to do better, and then you start linking them. So those little
mm,
pages that are now, I mean, they're only getting a few clicks, right? Because the search volume on them is 10. That's fine,
right.
but you're ranking now for that term. You're on page one. You're starting to get impressions. You're getting clicks, and then link from that page to one target page, and now you're passing juice and authority up to that target page from your own site, and it will decrease your reliance on backlinks, which will decrease your susceptibility to Google updates and decrease traffic volatility. It'll be just this slow growth as you continue to build out, and you'll become a topical authority on whatever you're writing about.
Oh man, this is God. I'm trying to stop. I really, because I can go on for days with this. But you know what this reminds me of, and I think that there's themes all across marketing. When you talk about this, it's just like deliverability, right? Like if you're doing a good job keeping a clean list, maintaining good engagement with your existing email list, every new person that joins your list now inherits that good reputation that you've built, and you increase the chances that
Hmm.
they now receive your emails in their inbox and it avoids the spam folder. Well, the same thing here is if you're following this tutelage for every article, You're just adding keywords, the amount of keywords to your entire site.
That's right.
So no article starts from scratch.
That's right.
It picks up from where your entire domain or your entire site has generated and created for them. Man, wow, thank you. So in closing, I do want to ask you about the Page Optimizer Pro, I think it
That's
is,
right.
but
Yeah.
the software that you've created. Now that people have a better understanding of SEO and the importance of it, what exactly does your software do for them?
So what we do is we look for a competitive edge. So like I said, that secret is hiding in plain sight. But when you start getting to the math, sometimes that means with the competitors that are on page one, you want to do a little bit more than them. Sometimes it means you want to do exactly what they're doing, and sometimes you want to do a bit of less. And what Pop does is it
Mm,
looks for those edges. Like where do you need to do a little bit more? Where should you do about the same? Where should you do a little less? So that we can give a page to Google that Google will like more than your competitors. So we aren't like giving like page one averages. We're not giving best practices. Like Yoast is a fine tool, but it's just giving best practices. And so
yeah.
you get the green dot, but that's everybody gets the green dot. And it doesn't matter what your niche is, what's going on. As long as you've
Right.
done that one thing, everybody gets the green dot. But every keyword is different. Every niche is different. The math is a little bit different for all those things. So you want to do that process every time where you can get the actual numbers. And so that's what Pop does for you is that you put in your target page, the keyword, your location, and the language, and then we give you a brief that kind of gives a rundown of all the terms, the important terms that you need, and how many times you need to get them in those very important places. Your H1, your title, in the subheadings, and in the body content.
Got it. Great, man. So, Kyle, people have listened to this. Hopefully, they're willing to give SEO an informed chance in their marketing. You know what? No, I'm not going to end because there's one more question. There's
Okay.
one more question I want to add to you. I want to ask you. And what would you say? What would you say to that individual that says, "Look, I just spent $20,000 on Facebook advertising or some kind of advertising online. It didn't really generate much. I know that SEO takes years. It just takes years. Are you telling me, Kyle? I'm the listener. Are you telling me, Kyle, that my money could have went longer, how about this question? How much further could that $20,000 investment go in SEO with respect to advertising? Not trying to say advertising doesn't work, not trying to pin them against each other, but give people perspective on what they could expect in an investment of SEO if they're in comparison to what they would usually see. Because I see these companies charging anywhere from $7,000 to $10,000 to get started. At the end of the day, you're spending anywhere from 20, some up to $50,000 a month to get their ads in front of the right amount of people.
Sure.
It is making a return. What does that investment in SEO look like?
The investment is probably gonna be a lot of content. At least that
Hmm.
if I had the money to spend, that's where I would put it, because you want to get that content out there that is going to rank. But a good
Yeah.
chunk is going to go into research as well, because
Mm,
it's not just putting up pages for the sake of pages. You want to put up pages that actually will rank quickly. And that comes
yeah.
down to figuring out like what your site's actual authority is, like what kind of terms will Google trust you, and there's a little trial and error in there. Launch some pages,
Yep.
see how they perform, but you can figure out actually what your current authority level is, and then start pumping out content to then raise it up. So essentially, you can start doing
Mhm.
SEO without SEO. It's really more of the
Yeah.
research and then creating the content like that. So what you're going to do is you're going to kind of have two different types of content. You're going to have those smaller pages, and they're going to rank quickly, and you're going to have those longer pages that are going after those more difficult things that you're spending more time. You would use a tool like Page Optimizer Pro on them. So you're kind of like doing a balance of two things, so you can start to get some quick wins. But then while those other pages, you're right, could take 4, 5, 6+ months to really do anything significant. At least you're getting some traffic in the meantime. Uh,
Yeah.
to your point, though, on not pitting them against each other, you're 100% right. You shouldn't just have one channel for
Yeah.
traffic. You should have Google Ads, you should have some sort of social media platform, and you should have some SEO going on, and they can work in tandem. And one of the best ways is if you spend all that money on paid ads, you probably know what titles people like. Like when you think about like
Mm.
you've probably got some click through rate data. People like this concept more than that concept. You can shape your SEO around that. That's invaluable
Mm.
information, because the worst thing is, and this happens quite a lot, you invest in SEO, you get to page one, it took 6 months, you spent 2,000 a month, so you're 12,000 in, and then nobody likes it. Like nobody clicks on it. Like nobody like no, this is a terrible product, or like the line you have just nobody engages with. So you're there,
Yeah.
but you're still not getting the return. So something that ads can do for you is show you, it gives you that proof of concept. Will people click on this?
Mm,
You know, do they like, is that resonating with them? Is the little description resonating as well? And then will they convert like I want them to convert? And whether that's a sale, an email, or some other conversion point, are they actually going to do it? So that's what ads can do for you. So it can, once you dial in like, yes, this is exactly what we want, then SEO is a
yeah.
great play because then you can get those long term, basically evergreen results, and not have to be dependent upon paying Google every time.
Got it. Got. Oh man, this is it's highlighting the strategy. This is what's making me excited is there's an entire strategy to this thing, right? Social, paid, SEO. And as you mentioned, they can all work in
Yeah,
conjunction with one another if you understand. I'm all about efficient execution. So instead of just pouring money,
right.
creating articles, you can now use all three to strategically create that shortest path from question mark to customer. Man, this was great. This was great, Kyle. We're gonna continue this conversation in the community because I want to have some screen share going where you can actually walk through it, and at least everybody in my paid community can see the exact steps that you're taking,
Yeah,
because I believe every business I'm training digital marketers to become automation service providers. They're helping businesses scale by automating their marketing and sales. This is a critical piece. This
yeah.
is a critical piece for traffic to come into that site so that they can convert and they can take them on this customer journey. So I'm looking forward to that, man. Thank you so much, Kyle. If people want to get in contact with you, find out about your software, what's the best place that they can go to do so?
KyleRoof.com. That's the easiest one. And on there, you can see there's stuff about my agency, there's stuff about Page Optimizer Pro. There's also stuff about Internet Marketing Gold, where my courses are at too.
Great, great. Well, thank you so much, Kyle, for jumping on the podcast, man. I greatly appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. That was a lot of fun.
Yes, yeah. Absolutely, man. And again, everybody who's listening, this episode right here, I hope you may have to listen to this one a couple times because there's a lot. There's a lot in here. Make your notes and at least check out Page Optimizer Pro. I think that every ear that this podcast has touched, you're already interested or doing some form of marketing online. Do not go uninformed anymore. Get strategic. Use everything that Kyle mentioned. I know enough of SEO to understand you weren't just throwing out lofty, fluffy stuff. These are real strategies that work just by going to Google, seeing what they're saying, and formatting your article is enough. So, again, I can't thank you enough. Listeners, please, please don't just listen. Act on this one. Please act on this one. Your leads a thank you, and so will Google. So, Kyle, again, thank you so much, man. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Take care.